What is going on, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another episode of the Kingdom Says. I am your host, as always, Garrett Williams. Tonight, I'm joined by two very, very fine gentlemen. One, Mr. Arrowhead Tom at the top right of the screen. How you doing, Tom?
You know what? I'm doing pretty good. My ankle is healing up. My dog has been out to the bathroom plenty of times. He'll still bark at some point during the episode, but yeah, overall, doing pretty good.
Very nice, very nice. Also joining us, Randy Ellenberger. How are you doing tonight, Randy?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back, and happy New Year to Chiefs Kingdom and all you guys. So excited to talk some ball, some draft stuff, some coach stuff, some other whatever wild, crazy stuff that's going on in the NFL. So ready for a fun night.
Yeah, it's a interesting time in the NFL. Not for the Chiefs, of course, not for the Chiefs. For the first time in God knows how long, we're not talking about.
It's interesting that we're not talking about playoff runs and stuff like that.
This is really the most dead time
the
that we've
offseason
had.
Started a lot earlier for us this year, which I don't know what to do.
Not great, but hey, you know what? We're gonna make the best of it.
All the time.
Yeah, we're gonna do what we can. But yeah, it's going to be it's a interesting time for the Chiefs right now. A lot of coaching things going on, a lot of reports and news and colleges going on and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a wild time. What are we thinking initially for the Chiefs? Randy, since you haven't joined us in a couple weeks, what is your kind of outlook so far on the Chiefs?
I think it is a time of little self-reflection, maybe time to do a little self-scouting and look yourself in the mirror and see exactly, what the plan is. Like, what are we trying to do? What do we have to do to get back to where we were? And, I've, in conversations with you guys, like, we were all fully aware that at some point the run was going to come to an end. Like, it's inevitable. Like, all dynasties fall, whether it's Persia, Rome, or Kansas City. It was going to happen. However, I did not expect the wheels to fall off as quickly and badly and turn into an absolute wreckage of a car crash scene as it turned out to be. So it's kind of hard to not think about the playoffs right now, but as Tom and I love the off season and the draft and all those other fun aspects of the NFL football world, it's kind of exciting to get a little earlier jump into that stuff. So, we got to look in the mirror. We got to, there's been some coaching change already in the organization. There's some things that some people need to talk about. So I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting off season. We got some things to figure out, but it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, definitely some things to figure out, and I think the most important thing that's kind of in the forefront of people's mind right now is the coaching carousel that's going on. Obviously, after the playoffs or after the regular season ended, that's kind of infamously known as Black Monday, where they just all of the coach firings take place, and there's a lot of maneuvers this time of the year because. A lot of surprising moves, head coaches getting moved on from, coordinators, offensive, defensive. There was a lot. There's guys like John Harbaugh from the Ravens who was moved on from, Mike McDaniel over at Miami. There's a good amount of names that are now free agents, and so it's going to be a wild coaching carousel. There's guys from the Chiefs that are in some interviewed names and interview candidates. Most certainly Matt Nagy, which is if you ask any Chiefs fan about that, it's like, that's kind of interesting. But we're big Matt Nagy fans on this show. I'll tell you what, and I think he's going to be a great head coach wherever he goes because he should be anywhere but the Chiefs. Is really what we're looking at. But so he's
That's
been
like even if he doesn't get a head coaching job, the odds of him coming back are slim to none, apparently.
Yeah, so that was the big report that I believe Nate Taylor broke, which basically Matt Nagy's contract was expiring already. It was already expired, so he's not under contract. And it seems like with the amount of interest he has with these coaching candidate jobs, especially these head coach positions, he seems like a hot name. And former head coach of Chicago for a couple years, has a lot of experience underneath Andy Reid and coaching Patrick Mahomes and stuff like that. Definitely, I mean, when it comes down to it, he is an impressive candidate, and he is a good guy. But I think just for the Chiefs' sake, it'd be nice to have a little bit of change. And I think for his sake, it'd be good for him to branch out, whether it's a head coaching position or maybe another offensive coordinator position somewhere else. But it does seem like the writing is on the wall that Matt Nagy won't return to the Chiefs in 2026. Hopefully, we can only hope. Love Nagy, but definitely need just another fresh voice on the offensive side of the football to kind of steer things back in the right direction. There's been a lot of talk, and we've talked about it for the past 3 years, basically, that Matt Nagy's been the offensive coordinator, of saying like, hey, this offense has some pretty serious problems here that, whether it's one thing or the other, running the ball, committing to the under center game, all these different things. It just, for whatever reason, was not working. And I know Tom put out a really nice kind of essay on Twitter of kind of the importance of the offensive coordinator position and what they can really impact. Tom, how do you think? What do you think has been the problem with Nagy, and how do you think a new offensive coordinator, whoever it might be, there's a lot of names, but what do you think like the difference of an offensive coordinator can make for this team?
Yeah, and so I want to be careful to say that the problem was specifically Nagy in itself. I think that Nagy and Andy are very familiar with each other. In fact, it feels like it's almost like there was too much comfort there, right? Like, and I think my biggest concern was just that there was a lot of groupthink. There wasn't a lot of pushback. There wasn't a lot of, hey, let's look at this tendency and try to challenge that or do that, or hey, I really want to change this. I really want to do this. Andy has always spoken very highly of Matt. Players seem to really like him. Like I get it from the human perspective. I think, as I explained, like in Kansas City with Andy Reid, he's going to have the final say on play call and big moments and all that stuff. But you, as the offensive coordinator, like your job is to be the sounding board. And I think there was maybe I don't even want to say, because I don't know the specifics of their interactions, but it felt like those tendencies, like there was just too much of a, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that. Like maybe they even adopting some of the same tendencies. For example, the difficulty to adjust to running under center. The refusal to play some young players, the challenges with getting, and I know we'll talk more about the receiver changes, but like the changes at receiving coach, all of that stuff kind of factors in where it just felt like maybe there was, yeah, I really think that it's a chance to get some fresh perspective and some pushback and in terms of how you design plays and how you pick which bundle of plays and which matchups you want to try to exploit every week, instead of maybe being in the same kind of patterns that we've seen a lot that were frustrating.
Yeah, that's definitely been kind of the issue, is just the lack of kind of branching out and really, deviating from what you'd always done. And when that wasn't working for a lot longer, then it kind of realized that became a problem. What is?
That's my cat. I have a cat, guys.
I was so confused on what was in front of Tom. That is.
I looked right for a second. I looked back. I was like, "Hey."
Yeah. Everybody say hi to Kiara. This is, you guys know Scout, but Kiara's a little more camera shy. Did you just bite him? I have witnesses.
First time on camera, she said, "I don't like this."
First time on camera, she assaults me. That's life with a cat.
Yeah.
And now I'm blurry. That's all right. Continue on.
Yeah. So, anyways, Matt Nagy likely out for Kansas City. There's a lot of coordinator options that I think have been floated around there. A couple other names as we talk about the positions that we could potentially fill. One other confirmed position coach that is on the move is one Mr. Connor Embree, which is a guy that has been all too familiar with Chiefs fans the past couple years. He has been the wide receiver coach for the past few years now, and boy, has it been a rough experience with Connor Embree. And we have been one of the biggest people calling him out the past few years, of saying like, hey, our wide receiver room has been taken a pretty drastic downfall, and we have this wide receiver coach who has very little, if any, coaching experience in the NFL or college or anything, really. I mean, he really does not have experience. Who knows how this guy got the job? He's been on the hot seat for a couple years now, and definitely came to a head with the reports that there's probably going to be a lot of coaching changes in Kansas City, offensive and defensive. But with Nagy likely out, Connor Embree is confirmed to be out. Randy, I know you're ecstatic over it, as is most of Chiefs Kingdom. There's a
Kind
report
of made
that
me
came
feel
out.
like Riverdance is what it did. I want to do a little happy dance.
Yeah. There's a report that came out that basically said, like, hey, DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce have basically been the more of an impact for these young receivers, and that's been the big issue of getting those guys to develop. So it's
and I never want to speak too ill of somebody, because that is their job and their livelihood, and they are human beings, and we have all those things. But when it came down to it, and he was the worst positional coach in the NFL. I swear to God, like some of the most basic, fundamental things that you teach wide receivers at a high school or even small college level, like I coached at, like they just couldn't do or wouldn't do or were doing so poorly. Like having your hands in the right place, it was painful to watch, and to watch some of these vets that we had come in like regress. Like it was just the strangest situation of a positional coach with little to no experience playing wide receiver, like none. Like he barely played at the University of Kansas, like returned a couple of kicks. He was a running back, I believe, at one point. Like
yeah.
he would have coached wide receivers at a high school for a year and somehow associated with Matt Nagy's kid, and voila, you're an offensive coach in the NFL for the dynasty of the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, how did that happen? Like, but you know what? It's no longer here. I don't have to worry about it, and we can move on, and we can bring in somebody who, for please, have some legit playing coaching experience as a wide receiver at some point in your life at least a respectable level. Like
That would be ideal. Yeah, that would be pretty
So,
ideal.
Randy, does that mean you wouldn't want to consider Connor Embree for a promotion to offensive coordinator?
I wouldn't want Connor Embree to be the water boy on my high school team right now.
Yeah.
Just saying. That's
Yeah.
the level of love that I have for that at this moment. So
Yeah, shout out to Connor, but I think Chiefs Kingdom will be much better off without him, and hopefully, we can bring in some guys specifically, whatever offensive coordinator might come in and bring in a couple other new staff or whatnot. Obviously, the big talk whenever you think of, the Chiefs hiring a new offensive coordinator, Andy Reid is always and forever. It will always be Andy's offense, right? We all can acknowledge that. The biggest problem is that you just kind of want a new face, a new voice to kind of come in and help, revolutionize some things. And is that something that Andy Reid's going to necessarily be willing to do, or is he going to deviate back to what he's comfortable with? There's been a lot of names that have been floated out already for offensive coordinator positions. Some of them very familiar. Mike Kafka, Eric Bieniemy, Doug Peterson have been three very notable names that all have direct ties to Andy Reid. And then there's been a whole list of outside guys, a couple McVay tree guys. Obviously, some recently released head coaches like Mike McDaniel and Kevin Stefanski is another one over there that's been talked about. Initially off the bat, what do you guys kind of expect for the offensive coordinator position? Do we think Andy actually gets an outside voice, and what do you think would prompt that to him to even consider adding an outside guy that would kind of challenge his ideas a little more? He's an older guy, he's very comfortable, might not have that many years left until he retires. Is he looking to get maybe a guy who can be his successor, or is he just trying to have another one of his buddies come back and run it back again?
see, and that's where I go back to my taking a good look in the mirror, comment earlier. It's like Andy's offensive coordinators for the last few years have all been old Andy guys. It was Nagy, then Bieniemy, then back to Nagy. Kafka was here at one point. Like, do I think Kafka could be a nice new little, some new younger blood in the room? Yeah, potentially, but he's also still coming from the Andy tree. Same with, thinking about bringing Todd Peterson or Bieniemy back. Like, we've seen that. We've had that in the past. And then you're just going to jump back into that same old level of familiarity that they all speak. It's great in a sense that, you know, they all speak the same language. They know exactly what everyone's talking about. There's not going to be a whole new, like, adjustment to a new playbook and new verbiage and new all this. Like, I think the transition would be seamless, which is good from a teaching point and communication aspect. But, like, I think right now we are in dire new need of some new blood, new ideas, new fire. Because, like, speaking of fire, that's one thing that I talked about all year long. Every time I was on with you guys, like, our team seemed so flat. Like, there was no fire from hardly anybody on a regular basis, and if it was on the defensive side of the ball. Like, the offensive guys, like, you have to have some fire and some want, you know, and a desire to go out there and whoop some ass too. And there was none of that. It was just so even keel. Like, at least with Bieniemy, there was some fire. Like, that dude, there was some discipline. There was some attitude. There was a I want to run your ass over type mentality. Nagy was just so blah. Like, there was just nothing there. Like, we need some kind of new blood or fire to invigorate this offense again. And maybe you need somebody with a little bit different ideas to light a fire under Andy's ass, to maybe annoy him a little bit, to make him draw some more shit up or think new about something. But, you know, like we keep saying, you know, it's going to be Andy's offense. He's going to call the plays. Like, maybe it's time for Andy to be the overseer of all things, and just the overseer, and finally hand the reins over to play calling to someone else. Like, he's now, with Pete Carroll being fired, the oldest coach in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of really good young coaches with new ideas and new energy. Like, we need a spark. I think we got complacent, we got flat, we got just used to how things have been going, and we didn't continually, like, stoke that fire to, like, make us want to be better and better. So I think we need some new blood.
Tom, I want to get your thoughts on it as well, but also with an added question in there, and it's something that I haven't really heard people really mention when you kind of talk about this search for a new offensive coordinator and adding a new mind and all that stuff. Another big kind of issue that you're running into is the fact that you don't have your quarterback for most of training camp, right? Is that something that is something to consider? You know, if you're bringing in a new outside voice who has a whole, you know, kind of new, maybe not entirely new offense, but a lot of new schemes and stuff, you're missing Patrick Mahomes for that majority of training camp and offseason action. I mean, he's in the building and stuff like that, but, you know, you're trying to install a new offense with all your guys, and then you don't even have your quarterback there. Is that what maybe that's just what I might think, like, hey, maybe they'll play it safe and bring in more of an Eric Bieniemy or a Mike Kafka, so they're all on the same page when Pat Mahomes is back, and it's not really a huge.
There might be something to be said for that, but, you know, Pat's gonna be in the building. Like, he may not be out on the field taking those physical reps.
Yeah.
But he's going to be a sponge, and he's going to absorb that entire playbook and know the ins and outs of everything. By the time he gets on the field, he's going to be able to communicate and process and all that stuff. So I don't think that's a huge thing, because Pat's a different animal. So
yeah, I would agree that, like, in some circumstances I would be worried, but we're talking about Patrick Mahomes. Those live reps do matter, but I think that at a baseline, you could probably put him out there and he's going to figure it out pretty quick. Yeah, I'm very much in the. I'm curious because Andy has always been very loyal to his coaches, and this is a pretty big shakeup. Oh, the cat and the dog are in a standoff. Hey, what are we doing? All right.
Dad's working here. Cut the crap.
This is Scout. Leave the cat alone.
Scout, leave Kiara alone.
He's having a day. I just think that there is a lot of this is the first, like, test for how this offseason is going to go. Do you adapt and change, or do you continue to do what you've always done? I think getting it out early that Nagy's not coming back letting go of Connor Embree, like so far we're passing the vibe check. I understand all the complaints about Andy, and I understand you even like I see people bring up like, well, this is the same stuff that led to him getting ousted in Philadelphia. No, right? This is different. This is him handling it differently. In Philadelphia, when there was coaching turnover, and the kind of the big thing was he moved one of his defensive line coaches to offensive coordinator, and it was a complete disaster. Just out of loyalty to that coach, and it was like week 4, 5, 6 before they made a change. This is we're not doing that. He's not at least to my knowledge. I don't think we're gonna move Joe Cullen over to offensive coordinator.
I don't know.
But I think I could see an argument of like, hey, let's go with what we know and what we're familiar with. But I also think fresh blood, different ideas, different concepts are important. The one caveat I would give to that is I did really like Mike Kafka and how he handled himself in New York as a play caller, and think like I know we're familiar there and there's that familiarity, but I thought he did a really good job and showed a lot of things that were even outside of what would kind of be the traditional Andy theme. But there's also just a lot of coordinators out here that I'm like looking at, and they're just potential candidates that could really be great voices. And because Andy's been around for so long, his influence, his fingerprints are all over this league. Like it's hard to find a coach that hasn't, rubbed shoulders with somebody that he's coached with before. So I think that's important to note that a lot of these things, like we talk about the language and all that stuff, is going to be pretty adaptable and really, you meld it into you might have to change some language here or there, but it's really the concepts and the strategy that go into it that I think are the most important part. And to Andy's credit, I think he's always been pretty open and receptive to like collaborating with his coaches and with his team. So, do we want to talk candidates? What do we think?
We'll definitely talk. Yeah, I will definitely. We'll dive into candidates right now. My last thing about former coordinators or people familiar with Andy, like you mentioned, Eric Bieniemy or Mike Kafka. The one benefit, obviously, bringing back someone like that is the fact that they've now been on multiple stops since they've been in Kansas City. Right, Eric Bieniemy's been in Washington, and he went to UCLA for a year, and then he's now currently the Bears running back coach, I believe. That might have been. I think that's all 3 years covered.
Look at those Bears running backs this year, man, carrying that team.
And then you look at Kafka, and he's been in New York for a couple years under Daboll, and Daboll was obviously a pretty coveted mind when he was hired there, coming out of Buffalo. So I mean, the benefit is at least you have a couple guys who have had more stops recently. So even though they are very familiar with Andy and the system and everything like that, they might have some more new ideas anyways to bring in. But I think I'm definitely with you guys on the camp of let's just bring in a brand new guy, someone who's got a lot more, just a lot more changes. We got to see some kind of different offense than what the offense has slowly been evolving, or I guess you could say devolving into these past couple years. And so let's talk about some candidates. Let's talk about some candidates. A couple candidates I want to mention first and foremost that I think are pretty. I don't know about likely, but I guess the connections are a lot closer there. One guy I thought about instantly when his name became available, Cliff Kingsbury, is a guy who obviously very familiar with Patrick Mahomes. He thinks every interview Cliff Kingsbury has, he basically just rants about Patrick Mahomes and how good he is. Former head coach for the Cardinals for a couple years. Then he has been in Washington for the past few years. Had a really good season last year with Jaden Daniels. A lot of injuries and stuff like that. I know.
Right, I got sidetracked. I got the Miami game over here in the corner.
Yeah, you just ran that thing in. Pretty fire. But yeah, Cliff Kingsbury being a name who's been in Washington for a few years, had a good season with Jaden Daniels last year. Had a lot of issues over there at Washington this year. It seemed like from all levels of it. But that's a guy who's obviously been a really coveted offensive mind for a long time. Really young guy who's had a really good success at Texas Tech with Mahomes, and then throughout the NFL, he's had some pretty good stops. that was the first name that I thought that I was like, well, that seems like a pretty easy connection. And you talk about the familiarity, and even though you don't have Patrick Mahomes for a lot of training camp and you're just missing those live reps, at least you have a guy who's very familiar with him and knows exactly how to utilize his skill set and knows exactly, he knows how to have a productive offense. Now, you look at some of the advanced statistics from his offenses and stuff like that, maybe he's running under center even less than what the Chiefs did this year, which is somehow crazy to believe. And I know some of his offense is kind of really, really dependent on having some really high quality skill players and quarterback in there. But what do you guys think initially off the bat of Cliff Kingsbury?
I mean, he's the shiny toy. Like, it's
Yeah.
I think I would pass on Cliff for a couple of reasons. I Cliff to me feels like somebody who, in the coaching world, um, where his potential has kind of outpaced his actual production. Um, I think that he's got a lot of good concepts and a lot of good qualities as a coach, but and I know he's got connections with Patrick. I just feel like he has just not been. There's just nuance that I think I don't associate with him, especially maybe that's me thinking about his time at Texas Tech. Seems like a great dude, and I think he could be a really, really good like head coach one day. I think the other thing with bringing him in is you think you're bringing a guy in and like the chances that he is going to be gone in a year, 2 years tops, very, very likely. Especially because he's going to get the Patrick Mahomes rub. Like he's going to come in, Pat's going to look good, and they're gonna, he's going to get poached pretty quickly. If he doesn't land a head coaching job now, I think he's interviewing for a couple places. So I don't mean that any disrespect to Cliff. I just don't know if the fit is right with what we're looking at right now. So I know Pat would be ecstatic about it. I know that there would be some more things. I would also say one of the overlaps is him and Andy both tend to get away from the run and not run the ball as much as they should, and that just feels like I don't want to play Texas Tech. Patrick Mahomes Texas Tech ball where you're just trying to win a game, 57-35 because you.
Well, I mean, 2018 was kind of fun. I mean, 2018, that was kind of that same thing. But I get what you're saying. Yeah. Another interesting thing I think when you look at like a guy like Cliff Kingsbury, he's always been the guy on offense. If you think about it, like obviously he was the head coach at Texas Tech, he was the head coach at the Cardinals, and then like when he was here, when he was in Washington with the Commanders, under Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's a defensive guy, so he's kind of the de facto head coach for the offense, anyways, kind of similar to Spags is. So it's like bringing him in. Is he going to be able to kind of be under Andy Reid? Is he going to be able to kind of relinquish some of that control? And that would, maybe would that help him in some of his concepts? Or is that, like Tom said, you kind of have a mini Andy Reid where you don't want to run the ball, you're just air raid and slinging the ball all over the place. It's like, it's something to think about. You almost need, he's almost too similar to Andy, but just like a lot younger, Missouri, your moment is finally here because DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is now live in your state. Now you can make every game more exciting with same-game parlays, money lines, props, and even more. All from your phone, all safe, all secure, and easy to use. Now Missouri fans know game day. The tailgating, the noise, the passion. Now with DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bring that same energy to every game, every touchdown, and every win. And right now, new Missouri customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. No waiting, no nonsense, just pure action powered by America's top-rated sportsbook app. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code KingdomSays. New Missouri customers bet just $5 and get $300 instantly in bonus bets. That's code KingdomSays. The crown is yours in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yeah, you guys brought up a couple of really big points that I was going to touch on. Is that basically he would be a 1 to 2 year rental. He's not going to stick around long. And then two is would he be able to relinquish a lot of that power that he's used to Andy, which I think that key right there is going to eliminate a lot of those top guys off the candidate list, like Cliff, Kingsbury, or McDaniel, and then even Stefanski. Like in that sense, like those guys aren't going to want to sit there and have to sit there and watch Andy call the plays and do all the things. Like they're going to want to have them be the guy. So I think that really cuts the list of candidates a little shorter for us. But I mean, the idea is fun to think about, like to get back to chucking the ball around the yard and putting up a bunch of points. But like to Tom's point too, is like we were much more successful, much more balanced when we ran the football well, and that's not Cliff's bag really. So he's. No. I don't know. I'm with Tom. I think I pass on Cliff for all those reasons. But I mean, it's exciting to think about for a second until you really start to dig in and start to put the pieces together and see if it adds up. And I don't think it does.
Yeah, and you make a good point about if any former head coach or potential head coach candidate, it's going to be very tough to have them come in and not even be the main play caller necessarily as the OC here. So because there's no way Andy's relinquishing that kind of control for anybody basically. One
like
point
I mentioned before, maybe he should at some point, but I don't.
Right, think but it's what he should, what he likely will do. One interesting point, when you talk about
Hail Mary,
future.
Game over. Sorry.
Game over. Yeah, Miami going on. But you talk about like guys who are potentially like a 1-2 year stopgap. I mean, we don't know how much time Andy Reid has left, right? Like it's like who knows how. I mean, it seems like he could coach forever, but like there's a likely chance that he only has 2 or 3 more years left. So I mean, I don't think the organization's going to have that much forethought where they're like, okay, we have to try to find a replacement for Andy, with this hire necessarily. But it's just something to think about. There is a chance that head coach position comes available in a couple years. So if you have a guy like a Stefanski or a Mike McDaniel or a guy who wants to take a couple year gap as a coordinator and then get back into a head coaching role, that could always be an option. But so let's look at some other more unheard of candidates. I know there's notably a guy at the Rams. I already forget his name. Steelhouse, I think his name is. That what his name is?
Shieldhouse.
Shieldhouse. Yeah. Shieldhouse. What's his first name? Anyone know his first name? Great guy. Nate Shieldhouse. Yeah. It's a fun name to say, Nate Shieldhouse. Really, really young, up and coming coordinator underneath Sean McVay. He's been with Sean McVay for a couple years as like a coordinator, pass game analyst, or something like that. He's been a name that's been floated a couple times for people. I think he has some Kansas connections, if I'm not mistaken. There's a couple other names. What other names? I guess I'll let open up to you guys. What other names stick out to you as like potential OC candidates that could that are more realistic as guys that probably maybe haven't been OCs already or haven't been head coaches already for sure. Or maybe even OCs trying to make a lateral move somewhere. Is there any other names that are really sticking out to you guys?
I'm going to throw one just to get it out of the way, and so we don't have to talk about it. Mike McDaniel's not going to happen. And I could be wrong, but I just don't think schematically it fits. I don't think personality wise it fits. Not where it just doesn't. I can't see it. Great play caller, but I just think he is not. Similarly to the Cliff Kingsbury conversation, I'm a big fan of Kevin Stefanski. The Cleveland's head coach just got fired. There were quite a few times when he was making chicken salad out of chicken shit with that team, and we know he knows how to run the ball. I think he's well respected. I think if you want to talk about a guy who could hang around for a couple years and take over for Andy and have a good transition, that would be probably the top of my list. I think he got such a raw deal in Cleveland when the owner forced the Deshaun Watson thing, and that really did doom him. But I thought he did everything he could. So those are some names that people might know. I have a couple other guys that I was looking at this list. There's quite a few players or a few coaches who played for Andy. So I mentioned his coaching tree, but there's also guys who played with Andy or played for Andy as players and are now in the coaching ranks. So it's interesting to see some of that. So
yeah, obviously there's always going to be some kind of Andy connection to it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Stefanski thing, like if there was a clear plan put together, like Andy's like, I have 3 years. I have 3 years. I'm going to call it quits. Then I could see a guy like Stefanski. Like I would be 100% on board if that was the case. Like Stefanski, yes, has proven himself. He's a 2-time Coach of the Year winner in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Like no one goes to Cleveland and does well, especially with the situation he was given with players and quarterbacks and the nonsense, and just like he did the absolute best he could with a bunch of nonsense. So if that was ever the case, I'd be on board for that. I still think, like, I have this overwhelming gut feeling that at the end of the day, it's going to be Kafka. For some odd reason, he's got the familiarity. He's quarterback coach. Pat loved him when he was there. He's a young guy, so he's got a little bit more energy and attitude and fire. He wants to climb that tree. He wants to learn and continue to progress, but still, he's gone somewhere now. He has a few more ideas. He can bring that back. And I could also see that too. Like Kafka seems like he's a hell of a coach. Like all reports are like the kid knows what he's doing. And that's another thing too. Like groom him for 2 to 3 years as the offensive coordinator under Andy, and then hand over the reins type situation. And now you have a young coach with all the knowledge that he's learned from Andy and how to do things to kind of continue that train and make that as seamless as possible. So with all the names you talk about and you see and you try to put the pieces together, for some other reason, gut reaction, it's just, for me, I think it's going to end up being Kafka.
I mean, it makes the most sense.
I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it.
I mean, he was quarterback coach in Kansas City for a couple years. He was the guy that was kind of being developed to be the next offensive coordinator essentially before he got the position with New York, and he kind of almost a year late, right, or a year early for the Chiefs. If he would have hung around one more year, he might have got the offensive coordinator job in KC instead. But like you said, been around. Yeah, he has a little more fresh ideas and stuff, and also hell of a coach, hell of a leader. I mean, he became the interim head coach for the Giants this past season after Dable was fired, and I mean he had some fire to him. I mean they had a good they ended the season pretty decently, which is not good for the Giants really, because I think in the last 2 3 weeks of the season they went from having the number 2nd overall pick to having the 7th overall pick or something like that. So. Not good for the Giants, but for the fight that he kind of showed for that team, I mean, it makes sense for him to come back and, be that potential head coach in waiting that you could really pair up with Pat to finish his career out. And not only that, but also, for the future, that could be a guy you could have for the next 10, 20 years and be pretty comfortable with that. So that would be a pretty likely guy in my opinion. And then, whatever. Yeah, it's always good I feel like, to hire from the McVay tree. That's always kind of a home run. That's why I like that Nate Shiohas guy. There's a couple other McVay disciples that are around the league that are available. It's just how much of a new system or a new thought process are we really doing? Kafka, it's a little bit. You're bringing in a little bit of Dable offense and stuff like that. Even though Kafka, I think, was kind of the main play caller and coordinator, scheme wise for the Giants anyways. So, but at least he's a guy that can challenge the ideas of Andy a little more and maybe just get this.
And Dable was in Kansas City too. That was pre-Reed though, right?
Pre-Reed, yeah. He was on the, if I'm not mistaken, he was on the 2-14 team. Was that year? Was he?
Yeah, he wasn't a very good offensive coordinator when he was
Dable.
Yeah, he was very early.
Yeah, that was a very early stop for him. So another guy that's been in the coaching cycle, been getting a lot of noise, is another former quarterback, former Texas Tech quarterback, teammates with Patrick Mahomes, Mr. Davis Webb. He's been a guy who's been rising up the ranks. A guy that's been he's currently the Denver's quarterback coach. Been working with Bo Nix. Not a guy who's had head coaching experience or a lot of play calling experience even. So that could pair well with Andy. He could almost kind of take him under his wing and develop him in that sense. That's another name I've seen floated out there as a really hot commodity. I don't know how you guys would feel about him, but at least has familiarity with Patrick Mahomes and maybe, you never know. You never know with some of these outside guys what the criteria is. Obviously you always got to think BYU. Did he go to BYU? There's like a 50% chance he'll get higher then. But other than that, it's kind of hit or miss of what we might think Andy will look for as far as a quarter. If it's even Andy, obviously it'll be a lot of Andy, but I wonder how the overall process will be of like, what's the goal with this coordinator hire? Are you just going back to the same old and just replacing Nagy, or are you really trying to? And it feels like Tom alluded to earlier, it feels like they're on the right track. It feels like they know that there's deficiencies that they need to acknowledge, and that they need to do something more drastic than what they've been doing. So any other names that stick out to you guys?
Well, and I want to shout out Matt Lane from KCSN, who put out a list of coaching candidates, and he kind of gave his ranking, and I'm just using that as a reference point. And two names that I mentioned, the two players that are coaches. So Hank Fraley, who played center for Andy for 5 years in Philadelphia. He was an undrafted free agent offensive lineman, and he carved out a 10-year career in the NFL, which you got to work hard at. He's got a lot of offensive line coaching background. He's currently he's been the Detroit Lions offensive line coach since 2020, currently their line coach and run game coordinator. Talk about trying to bring some more toughness and identity to this offense. I think that's if you're talking about, just character and identity. And obviously he played under Andy, but he's also been obviously worked with Dan Campbell in Detroit. It looks like he started his kind of professional coaching in Minnesota back in 2014. So like he's been around. The other one that's really fun is Deuce Staley, who's currently the running back coach for the Browns.
Yeah, there you go.
Running back, actually coached under Andy. That's where he started his career. He actually coached under Andy, Chip Kelly, and Doug Peterson while he was with the Eagles. Okay. Then he was over with the Lions, again with Dan Campbell. Went to the Panthers under Frank Reich the year that he got fired. So, and then ended up with the Browns. So you talk about a guy who's familiar with Andy, but also has a lot of other experiences. I don't know where he'd be at as a play caller, but he's been in a lot of rooms. And one other guy who's kind of a younger guy that, like, I don't know. This is the one that as I looked at, was the most intrigued by, which is Thomas Brown, who's currently the Patriots' new pass game coordinator and tight ends coach. He has coached, so I'm just throwing it. So he started with the Chattanooga Mocs in 2013. I have no idea who that is. But started in 2014. He coached Melvin Gordon. So Thomas Brown is a former running back. Coached Melvin Gordon at Wisconsin in 2014. Went to Georgia and coached Nick Chubb. Went to Miami, South Carolina, and then went to the Rams under Sean McVay.
Okay.
He's running back coach there the year that they won the Super Bowl. And that's where he was running backs coach, tight end coach, and assistant head coach. Then he went to the Panthers to be offensive coordinator under Frank Reich. He got a chance to do the play calling there. Then he went to Chicago, and he was the guy who took over for Matt Eberflus after Matt Eberflus got fired.
He got fired.
So he's done some interim, and then now he's in New England. He's 39 years old, and he's already had all this experience. That intrigues me. Talking about a guy who's worked with a lot of different players. He coached with Mark Reich, Richt. I don't know college codes, but he was at Georgia and Miami. But McVay, Frank, Eberflus, I mean, just lots of exposure. And then obviously being in New England, he's probably, I think Josh McDaniels is their coordinator currently again and for all of eternity.
Will ever have success.
I think he just comes with the building now. Like whoever comes in, like
5 years, he'll be a head coach for a day and then go back. But yeah, I just think that's again, you talk about probably some overlap somewhere. Those are three guys, fresh faces that I would all be interested in. But I think I'm with Randy. It feels like Kafka is a very likely.
Very likely answer. Yeah. Yeah,
you never
know.
Yeah, I didn't think much about him before, but yeah, after reading through a little bio and looking at it as his experience, it definitely could be like the next step in his coaching progression as well. Being a full-fledged coordinator, which he hasn't had the chance to be, in that role yet. But yeah, I guess I wouldn't hate that aspect either. So
yeah, well, there's a lot of time before we can kind of really figure this out. Still the playoffs to go through the NFL. There's probably going to still be coaching changes and stuff after the playoffs. Obviously, there's a couple big names, like always, usually when the coaching cycle, there's always a couple big names that, John Harbaugh and a couple of those guys, that's all those moves have to be made first before like all these other pieces start falling into place. Because, as soon as John Harbaugh was released, there were 7 teams reportedly calling him, and there were 7 teams with head coaching openings. So obviously, once those top guys are gone and more staffs kind of start to fill out, obviously you don't want to go too far because you want to have some kind of good candidates left. But
yeah, you don't want to be scraping the bottom of the barrel, the scraps that are left over.
Yeah, exactly. But some of these guys that are a little more high profile, some of the guys we mentioned, like Stefanski's and the McDaniels and stuff like that, we got to wait to see if they get head coaching jobs potentially before. That's going to be the big thing. And if they don't, then, where will they slot in with which teams and whatnot. So still a lot of news to be broken for the Chiefs. See if any other position coaches potentially get moved on from. I know, there's a couple other guys. Todd Pinkston, the running back coach, who was former wide receiver. I don't know why they never just flipped him to wide receiver coach. I mean, he was, and then they was like, you know what, just coach running backs instead. Actually, that'll be fun. And it was not fun. The running backs have been pretty bad. So I wouldn't mind seeing another fresh face in that room. Obviously, Andy Heck has received a good amount of criticism from this show because of some maneuvers the past couple years with some offensive linemen. So who knows with that? And on the defensive side of the ball, there's been a couple changes. One of our assistant linebacker coaches got hired by Michigan. We parted ways with another like assistant D-line coach or something like that. Really, I don't foresee too many changes on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe 1 or 2 positional changes, but
that's if Spags sticks around and doesn't get another head coaching gig.
Right, which I feel like Spags is pretty safe in my opinion. I don't know. I mean, maybe Tennessee or someone, or maybe the Giants will fall in love with him and entice him, but he still feels like a guy that isn't going to go anywhere. And there's people calling for his head too about moving on from him. I don't think we should move on from Spags. I think he's still a really good coordinator, one of the best defensive coordinators the game has ever seen. Really, if you really look at it, and I really loved in the locker room by his players and stuff like that. Just kind of a victim of circumstance this year with some of the situations that they came in. I think they still need to get, I think you should add a couple new voices there just because, it's always good to keep moving forward. Obviously the defense wasn't the greatest at times this year, especially on 3rd and 4th downs and stuff like that was a big problem. So that'll be something to fix, but I don't think that's an immediate, cause a lot of turnover at those positions. I think Joe Cullen is a really good defensive line coach. They just need some more dudes on that defensive line to actually for him to utilize. But outside of that, we have Dave Merritt, who's like one of the best position coaches in the NFL. So that's always a big big positive. There's hope that he doesn't get hired away from a defensive coordinator position or something like that. I've seen his name kind of floated out there a little bit, so that would be a big loss for the defense for sure. But outside of that, I think the defensive coaching staff will stay mostly the same, albeit a couple new assistant position coaches, if I had to guess. But more so, it's going to be the offense, I think, is the biggest thing. And can't forget special teams. What do we think? Is Dave Tobe? Can we move on from Dave Tobe already? I have been basically since this pod has been created. Actually, I have been one of the more anti Dave Tobe people, and for many years, Kyle and Tom have pushed back on me and said, "Oh, he's great, great coach. He's regarded. Blah, blah, blah. He's good at this. He lets McCole Hardman catch punts within the 5-yard line and then he muffs them. But he's great. He's gonna be great." And then this year, it seemed like there was a really big step back from the special teams unit, holding penalties on basically every single kickoff return. Really questionable decisions with the punt return unit, and just overall feels like that's a position that maybe Dave Tobe gets a head coach position. Maybe what if Tennessee, hear me out, what if Tennessee does some unprecedented, hires co-head coaches, Matt Nagy, Dave Tobe, boom, get them off our hands. You can have them both. What do you? But in seriousness though, Dave Tobe, are we keeping him or what? Or what's going on?
I don't know. I mean, this year's special teams today was just maddening at times. I understand that the new kickoff and kickoff return rules are still fairly new. People are still trying to adjust and figure out schemes and doing, but it doesn't seem like he's adjusted well to that at all. Like our kickoff return teams are bad.
Very bad.
I mean, our kickoff coverage teams seem to do fairly well, but our return teams are terrible. Like, when was the last time we had a legit, like, consistent kickoff return, or even punt return? Like, and I'm with you too. Like, I have always been of the sound mind and body belief that, like, punt returners, like, you have your heels at maximum the 7-yard line, and you don't go backwards anymore. Like, if that ball's over your head at that point, you take the bounce and hope it goes in the end zone, or you live with it. Like, I'm so sick of watching guys muff punts with inside the 10 and try to return something and just get smothered. Now we're starting our drive inside the 5. Like, that's maddening to me. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, Harrison Butker has declined in the last couple of years consistently. Like, he had the most missed kicks out of anybody in the league this year. And I love Harrison Butker. I have been a huge fan of his since day one. But the last 2 years, he's gotten worse and worse. I don't know. I understand that he's thought of as this great special teams coach and has been for years, but I am on the side of the fence now of I think it's time to move on.
I think I agree with Randy's take. My biggest frustration with Dave Tobe is the refusal to put people who are good at kick returning back as kick returners, i.e. Brashard Smith. Also, with the change in the return rules, it favors guys who are more able to handle contact. Somebody like a Brashard Smith versus a wide receiver. And I know Smith is kind of light for a running back, but he's still better at going through contact. There's a reason why in college football, Jadarian Price is so good at returning kicks.
Like Nico this year. Nico was great last year. Nico not good this year.
Yeah.
I think Tobe, with the assistant head coach title, with how long he's been around, I think he's going to be a guy who earns the right to leave on his own terms. Unless something catastrophic happens. Now, Butker being as inconsistent as they come, he just hasn't been the same since that knee injury a couple of years ago. It's up and down. That one's a hard one to place. I will say I think Matt Ariza looked better this year. So some of that is there the penalties drive me a little crazy just because no, you can't control a player like what they're doing in that sense. But one, you can change who's out there and who's got what
Yeah.
coverage
No
responsibility,
Jack
and you can
Cochran.
change how you coach certain aspects of it, so that you can reduce those. Especially because it was like repeatedly like blocks in the back and holding and things that are like more technique based. It wasn't like, oh, somebody lost their cool and threw a punch. It was, okay, you need to let go when you're when you're the gunner and the guy you're covering moves here, you need to let go of him. You can't drag him to the ground. Or, hey, if you're behind a guy, don't push him in the back. Like some of those basic things that should be pretty. And I get that. Some of it is it's I will say special coaching special teams is such a hard job because most of the time your unit is like it's role players, backup players, and guys who like sometimes you don't get a whole lot of say in who you get. You got to make what do with what
Well,
you have. But I
sometimes, but
think,
it seems like Dave Tobe has had a pretty
yeah,
substantial grasp over the last 4 or 5 people on the roster.
I just think that he could have done more with what he had. But I think we could say that about every aspect of this team this year. So I agree. I am personally okay with moving on, but I think he has, at least for the organization's eyes, earned the right to be here until he doesn't want to be here, or until it becomes a true problem. Kind of the Bob Sutton vibes.
Yeah,
Don't mention that name. Don't
that
put
is not
don't
ideal.
can't put that juju in the universe. You can't. God damn
Well,
it!
what I mean is like he has to be as bad as Bob Sutton was
Stop saying
for
that name.
them to move on.
Stop it. It's like
Already
saying
kind of that bad.
yeah,
It's
you
kind of
can't.
that bad.
No, stop saying that name.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to just suffer through another
Makes me shit
year of
when you say it.
bad
Bob
special
Sutton.
teams before we can deal with it. What we need. You mentioned running back being good returners. We need another Nile Davis. We can get Nile Davis back there. We need a running back who can just some kind of more spark to the return game. I know that's
Hey,
the return.
Damian Pierce. We have Damian Pierce. He
Yeah,
has
yeah.
done very well returning kicks in his career.
That's true. It just takes people a full calendar year, I guess, to learn how to be a Kansas City Chief or something.
Oh
I
my
don't know.
God!
I mean,
And
geez
playing
Louise.
running back is literally the easiest position on offense
Yeah,
to learn and coach.
yeah. Tell me what hole to hit, and then I'll hit it. How does that? How does
Like
that take
at a
multiple
point,
weeks?
like
I don't know.
there's too much coaching at running back. Like you give them aiming points and the scheme so they know like where the blockers are supposed to go. But that after that, like you let athletes be athletes. Like don't micromanage running backs. Like that is the worst mistake you can make as a running back coach. Like let those dudes be dudes.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. Like it should not have taken
No.
Damian Pierce 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it was, to hit the field and be active. Like give me a break.
Yeah, just like it shouldn't have taken Brashard Smith that long to find the field and find the returner role, and there's just a lot of things in hindsight that's like, very questionable personnel decisions, and there's the same people that have been calling the shots on these personnel for a while, and it's just seems like we keep on hitting some misses. So we'll see how much more turnover happens with the Chiefs staff and what other hires and whatnot will be made. That's everything that we've got for tonight. We had a solid hour on just coaching people, and it was good. It was good. So as the college football playoffs finish up here, and the NFL playoffs wrap up, obviously, there's going to be a lot more draft stuff going on. Obviously, Tom, Randy are the big draft guys. We're all very excited for this year's class. Very excited to have the 9th overall pick for the first time in a long time. Having a top 10 pick is crazy.
It's so weird doing mock drafts and having a pick inside the top 10. Like
it's almost too much power. It's like, all right, well, now we have to.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It is fun. So we will have a lot more content for you guys coming this off season. A lot more fun stuff to talk about, and we hope you guys join us for all of that. Be sure to check us out at Kingdom Says Pod, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Check us out YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts at. We will be there. Especially though, definitely check us out on YouTube. Definitely go drop a like and subscribe over there. You can see our beautiful faces when you're watching and listening, and that really helps. Goes a long way to supporting the.
You can see my cat.
So, yeah, you can see Tom's cat, and you can see Kiara and Scout having going Oklahoma drills over there, or something.
They are. They were in a standoff.
So a lot of fun times going this off season. 2026, we're going to try to make it a really good year and hopefully culminate with a really good Chiefs season next year. So got about 9 months until that happens. So we all, the countdown begins, and we will be with you guys for all that. So once again, thank you all for listening and watching, and we will see you guys on the next episode of the Kingdom Says.